Happy Saturday morning here. Josh on the wrong lead. Another episode of You Gotta Be Shot to Me, joined as always by Matt Carlson. I'm fresh off a work happy hour, obviously in the morning. That went much later than I think anybody expected to. It's really funny. With the health stuff I've had going on, and we were actually talking a little bit before about how we're both kind of drinking less. I'm at the point where on stream I used to have maybe 2 or 3 pours on Thursday night, and then Friday I'd have a couple beers, Saturday I'd have a couple beers, Sunday maybe I'd have a whiskey or two, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday I tended not to drink. But now it's like Thursday, maybe I have a drink. And so yesterday we went out to happy hour after our all IT meeting at work. And originally I just asked my team, I'm like, hey, do you guys want to go out for happy hour? And they're like, yeah, we'll go. And when we get to the bar, there's maybe 30 people from my department that showed up. Just because other people happened to be also going to the same bar, and when we were walking out, we ran into some people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll go out." So, but as per usual, I end up being part of the last group that is still out. But it was a really funny thing. Like I got my buddy Alistair. He lives maybe 5-6 minutes from me. And I work in the city of Chicago. I live out in the suburbs, about 45-50 minutes west of Chicago. So I usually take a train in. But he's like, I'll give you a ride. This was at I don't know, 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I believe Matt, I believe I messaged you right around 8 p.m. my time. I'm like, yeah, this isn't happening tonight. so
at that point you were like, maybe tonight, maybe. And I'm like, this isn't happening. No. At that point I packed it in. I knew.
Yeah, we at 6 at 5:30, he's like, I'll give you a ride. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, yeah, I just want one more beer. So we order a beer, and we're just kind of sitting there talking, and a couple of the guys we were there with were much further ahead in the drink schedule than we were. And they're like, oh, let's play some pool. And I'm like, I don't really want to play pool, they're like, no, let's go play. I'm like, all right, we'll play pool. So we ended up playing pool for a couple hours, which ended up, bringing everything. And then I just remember at some point, nobody there wanted to leave. And this guy was going to give me a ride home. So I was trying not to be an ass and be like, hey, we should go. So we probably ended up staying an extra hour and a half later than even I thought would be possible, staying late. But you'll be proud of me. I did not have more than 4 drinks. So so I'm gonna. Do I have the clapping? Can I clap for myself? Yeah, I'll clap for myself.
I got a similar story from Wednesday night, and that tends to happen every week. I think my drinking nights are mostly around my men's league hockey schedule now, and those nights that tend to go a lot later than you think they're going. I mean, men's league hockey, for anyone that plays, right? Our games start after all the practices are done and all the games are done, and so first puck drop's usually around 10:30 sometimes on a weekday night, and obviously afterward you gotta, unwind, can't get to sleep without, a few beverages afterward. But, every time you get the text from the wife being like, where the hell are you? And you look down at your phone and you're like, I screwed up. And you start thinking the excuses in your head of man, that Zamboni broke again. I got on late. We couldn't do that. Yeah, I'm just having one. I'm staying after it. All of a sudden it's 1 a.m. and you're like, fuck. So that was one of those nights on Wednesday where, because no one volunteered to bring beer, everyone was, panicking that no one would bring beer. And so for 9 guys that showed up, we ended up with about 120 beers in the locker room, which we did not finish. But when I left around 1 a.m. to head home, that locker room was still very full. So hopefully my team is still there next week. They show up. But those nights that you think are going to end early, sometimes they take a left turn, and you end up things happen. So,
Yeah,
hey,
no, I mean, and like I love my coworkers and it was fun, but I was like, at a certain point, like I think he noticed that like I wanted to get home, and so he was like, "Well, are you sure? You sure you want to stay out?" And then I was like, "I'm not gonna be the bitch, I'm not gonna
piggyback.
be the
Right.
guy." So I'm like, "Yeah, I'll have another beer," So I had another beer. We played some pool, and then he's like, "Why didn't you want to play pool? You're actually okay at pool." I was like, I was thinking like maybe I should get home, but I was like, "Yeah, we're stuck out here." But at the end of the night, yeah, they were starting to talk about. We'll just say topics that I don't necessarily want to talk to my coworkers about. And
that's that's
because
when you know
everyone
it's time to
everyone was
go.
a bunch of beers in at that point, and I was like, I'm just gonna look at my phone during this conversation, and every once in a while I would just chime in to let them know, yeah, I was paying attention, but yeah, it was just like I don't know, it was a
Sometimes
fun
people
little thing.
forget that you still got to talk to them come Monday.
Yeah,
Work happy hours have a different flavor to them for sure. So
yeah, but it was a good time. But to your point, I remember one time. I have a coworker who she'll come out, but she's always the first one to leave, and it was her birthday, and so nobody like there was only like two or three of us that could go out, and everyone's like, "Oh, can you take her out for her birthday? Just go out, have a drink." I'm like, "All right, fine." And so we go out, and she didn't want to leave. Like normally she's the first one to leave, and we were there. I don't know, dude. We were there till about 8 or 9 o'clock after work. When I thought I was gonna have a drink, and next thing you know, I'm catching like the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock train home. I'm just like, what the heck is going on, man? But yeah, you never know. You never know with the
it's a
work
wild
happy
card.
hours. But yeah, another thing you never know is like what the heck is gonna happen at Shot 10. Although last week, Matt, we should have had it.
I
We
think we
should have
did
had
have
it.
it. We just didn't bet it. So,
Yeah.
if for any loyal listener who actually followed what we said, you made 600 to 1 on that pick 3, so congratulations.
Oh,
We didn't. So,
yeah. Russ went ahead and messaged me immediately after, or when he woke up at 5 in the morning, my time. He's like, "Did you guys play that? Did you guys combine your picks and play it?" I'm like, "No."
of course we didn't. Why would we do
Yeah.
that?
And then he goes that damn A horse. So he was talking about the horse that I forgot that was the horse I had or you had. I mean, it was the horse that you had.
I had
Then
it,
the
yeah,
first
because
leg, yeah.
it came off lame a couple times, and I was like, this horse is primed, and yeah, wrong. I think I had the Quinella ice cold, and I didn't play it for anything. But
But that's how it goes sometimes. But race 8, we're gonna be going 1,000 meters down the straight here, and I thought that this was probably the most straightforward race in the sequence. I'm guessing that these are going to be your top two choices that I'm going to be leaning on. The 4 Stellar Express for John Size and Zach Purton. Obviously, you get Zach aboard here. Uh, Horse ran second last time, first time out going this a similar trip. And on Speed Pro, I believe that might have been the fastest last race. I'm just pulling it up. Yeah, it's the fastest last race. It's basically the fastest anyone's run in this field. I know you got a couple of firsters in here, but or first time in Hong Kong rather. But I don't know. This just seems like the type of horse that Zach and John Size win with all the time. Horse that ran well on its debut, coming back second time. If it didn't win on its debut, it's probably going to win here. So I think Stellar Express is a pretty big standout. And I thought the other horse that, if you're looking to get around him, I mean, Heroic Master, I thought made a bit of sense. Has been running a Happy Valley, but correct me if I'm wrong. The 1,000 meters of Happy Valley includes a turn, right?
it does. Yep, they
Yeah,
like launch on the turn, so it's kind of a funky config too. Draw kind of really matters for it because if you're way wide on that, you're stuck.
yeah, and he hasn't necessarily drawn badly in those races, but He's actually drawn well, but see maybe if you see a difference here coming down the straight. I know he's got one run over the straight here at Shot 10. It was pretty decent. I mean, pretty consistent horse. Outside of that 1200 try. I mean, those 1,000 meter tries are all pretty good. And maybe this is just a case where the field he's got here isn't as good as some of the other ones that he's been facing. I didn't give much of a look to the two horses that are coming in. I do know that the notes on both the horses, it seems like the clockers are a little interested in both of them. The 7 Gracious Express and the 10 Youthful Spirits. But I don't know. I really think the 4, like this is just like the typical John size second time out. Get Zach on. Like I don't know. I feel like I've seen this story a million times before. So I'm probably lean pretty heavily on this 4.
Yeah, I actually went a different direction with it. I think you're right. I do think this horse goes off favored, right? I think it'll take a lot of money. I think, last week you mentioned that 8 that, I was able to call out and, hopefully someone made money on it that I didn't make enough on. But I always think the stand side rail on these 1,000-yard flat races is the place to be. And if you look at it, my concern with that 4 is it broke from that rail draw last time, right? It got the ideal draw, it got the setup. So, it really has no excuses to me. Now, granted, okay, second up, like you're right, John Size, Jack Parton, you'd expect that horse to move forward. But at the same time, I don't like horses that had the ideal draw last time and then don't look as fast, kind of getting the perfect setup, right? So it picks up 2 pounds, it moves out 4 spots this time towards the middle of the track. I do think there's a lot of speed set on that outside rail now, so I don't think it's going to be able to navigate over that well. And for me, that meant, hey, I'm going to try and look elsewhere to a horse, other horses that aren't going to take as much money. Um, with that, you mentioned the firsters. I really like the 7 Gracious Express here. If you look at the trials that it's run, it shows some speed off the line, right? And if it's in the 13 draw, it's got to beat one horse out of the gate. That horse is the 6 Baby Crystal who's set up on that rail draw. Edzeni's on that 6. I reaching deep in the pocket here, but I do think Edzeni tends to break very slow. He's not good out of the gate with horses, so I do think that means that 7 Gracious Express is going to be able to slot on that rail draw. And so because of that, right, you don't want to be deep closing on a 5 furlong course, and whoever can get that rail position, I think benefits. I think that 7's got a perfect setup for this, and so firsters here tend to pay very well. People are always very skeptical on that. You saw that when I got screwed last week in that middle leg. You had a Zach Pert horse
Told you.
go off at 8-1, and I thought that horse would be even money or 2-1, right? And I said, hey, I don't want this horse because it's going to be too short, and it wasn't too short. And part of the problem with sleeping during these races is you don't see that stuff. So, shame on me, but it happens. So I'm not going to get fooled again by that. I think the 7 Gracious Express to me is an A, and I'm hoping to get a pretty good price on that. Um, I do like the 6. I think the 6 Baby Crystal has that ideal draw, right? And its 1,000-yard efforts have looked good. Granted, it picks up some weight, and like I said, Edzeni's not my favorite jockey, especially when speed's kind of required. Plus, those last 2,000-yard races at Shot 10 were on the similar draw, right? It had good position. It was getting the stand side rail. So I'm hesitant. I think that's more of a B for me. The other A that I liked was the 8, James Tack. I think that horse is moving forward. I think the 2 efforts at 5 furlongs here have looked really good. If you look at that effort back in January, the notes kind of suggest what happened. It stumbled out of the gate. It was caught in midfield, and it stays on really well. It's on the bad part of the track, and the horse that ends up winning, is kind of hugging that stand side rail the whole time. I do think, again, given the post, it can kind of slot in maybe behind, maybe in that second flight, behind a lot of speed that's going to be gunning for the lead. So regardless, right? I mean, it gets a couple pounds, right? It's racing now at 120. It does move up in class. That's a concern. But I do think if it's able to get position, cutting back to that 1,000 meters for a horse that probably hasn't hit its peak yet, is still kind of moving up the rating scale. That's always the horse that I want to find, and kind of say, hey, the ability doesn't match the current rating. It has to kind of keep progressing like that. So D8 for me, James Tech is my other A. So yeah, I kind of try to get around the horses that you liked, which I think are very logical. But 7 and 8 are the A's for me, and then the six more of a B from my side. And I'll probably, maybe even for price plays, try and get around Zach because I gotta, you know, I think race 10 to me is probably more straightforward. So yeah, I think I'll probably try and get around the four and play those instead.
That's bad. That's bad news for Russ if he saw what we did last week and decides to try and play the pick three here, combining our stuff, because
Just play
that's
them
gonna
all.
be like it's gonna be like six horses in that first leg, and if Zach wins, like woof.
It happens. They do pay though, so hey, it's you make your money back sometimes.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to race 9 here. We're gonna be going 1,800 meters, and we were talking a little bit before we recorded this about this race, and I was just like, I think I don't even remember how many horses I used in here. One, two, three, four. Oh, I only got four. But I felt like I don't know. There are so many ways I think you can go in this race. I think this race is interesting. I think this race is wide open. Um, and yeah, I had kind of a hard time narrowing some of this stuff down, but I'm interested where you ended up on.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll say the same thing I said last week. 1,800 meters to me is one of those distances that just screws me up, right? I tend to think that a lot of horses here don't want to go two turns, but I also think that the horses you put in these races are inherently two-turn horses because they need that distance, right? It's You're not breeding a horse to go, a mile and an eighth on a one-turn configuration. That just kind of doesn't exist, right? So you end up with either horses that have gone that mile and a quarter, maybe upwards of a mile and a half, um, and because of that, like it's weird, right? How are they going to scale back if all of their races are at two turns, and really that's kind of where they go? Or flip side, you end up with horses that are running like 6, 7 furlongs, maybe even the mile like configuration. Are they going to take to that extra eighth or that extra 16th, right? So it's hard, right? It's hard for me to be like, who wants to do this? And so I was scrolling through, and it's funny because all of these horses kind of have raced at the distance before, and at least for the data that I pull, it's like all of them drop off when they're running 1,800, right? Like I even thought my data was screwed up for a bit because I'm like, all of these races look like 5 lengths slower than all of their two-turn efforts. So I kept scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down, and I'm like, okay, well, these are all good horses, right? I love a horse like 5G Patch, right? That's one of my favorite horses running here. I don't think 5G Patch wants to go one turn. So, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. I ended up basically just taking all the low weights, right? I thought, hey, look at for horses that have wins at the distance. Look for horses that are, dropping weight. If I think stuff's equal, I'll probably always default to horses that aren't carrying as much just
Hmm.
because, that's a great equalizer here, right? So don't bet anything over 120 pounds. And so that's kind of where I ended up here. I think the two A's that I had, one was Alacrity, the 10. Obviously Zach's riding. That's an ideal setup. I thought it's got a lifetime win at the distance. Has been going shorter, but Zach low weight, good draw. What's not to like, right? I think you'll get a good price because I think a lot of these horses kind of have a bigger name, and so anytime you can kind of get that price on Zach, going a weird distance that I don't think anybody really wants, I think you have to take it. Um, the other horse I liked was the 12 CP Brave. There's obviously a big concern that James McDonald isn't riding the 12 and he's riding the 5 instead on a Champion Dragon. But I think it's honestly, if you look at it for me, the races at 1,800 are probably the fastest for this horse, and that's not something you could say for a lot of them against it. Has two straight wins at 1,800 meters, so this is obviously against tougher, but hey, you're getting low weight because you're moving up in class, and if you're stacked up against a field that doesn't really want to do this, to me that's a good setup. Um, and then for a B, I kind of like the 11, the best peach. There's been a lot of kind of best peach pictures coming in through the Discord lately, so I figured, hey, bet the name, why not? Look, it's drawn horribly. It's way out there. You get Karis Teton though, and look, if there's a configuration where draw matters the least, it's probably this one. there's a huge straightaway, right, for horses to settle out. So even if you're drawn 14 wide, you have a lot of time to kind of settle out and find position on that. So, hey, maybe it matters a little bit less. Um, this horse has kind of made up a lot of ground against some tracks that have been playing really forward. The flip side of that is, right, this horse looks like a horse that tends to finish third a lot, right? It runs up, kind of sucks up into the minor placings a lot. So, hey, I think it's worth a chance, right? I think it's got a shot, despite the draw and despite the fact that, it's a late closer and kind of never really has gotten there on these. So that's kind of where I defaulted to. I do agree with you. You probably could argue that it's an all race again. Maybe I'll even play it that way this week, but TBD. So,
Yeah, I really did like the 12 CP Brave. That seemed like you said, you go through this race and you see a lot of horses cutting back, stretching out, or that have tried the 1800 and haven't really run maybe the races they've run previously. Whereas CP Brave, I mean, the 1800 races kind of stand out a little bit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I thought that was that's definitely my second choice in here. I landed on Champion Dragon. It is drawn in the 13 post, and I think we talked, or you talked briefly. The gate here is in kind of a weird spot, and you have a bit of time to get over before you get into a turn. So there's this race is just devoid of speed, and Champion Dragon has shown a propensity to be forwardly placed. Has run okay in some Group Three races going this distance. And obviously, this is a much softer field. I mean, you have some horses that have also run in Group Threes, but I think that he's just landing in a softer spot here. Gets James McDonald aboard, who's very very solid, and I think there's a shot that this horse just ends up on the lead and could just cruise up there because I just don't see any other horse that I think even wants to sniff the lead. I mean, maybe the six, but I mean the six hasn't shown speed in races going quicker. Honestly, I think the wild card in this race for me is going to be the 10, and you talked about him a little bit, and mostly because this is a horse that does have a win going this distance, but I don't have stats to go that far back, so I don't know how far back we're going, and I believe that might be his only win in Hong Kong is going this distance.
Yep.
So maybe people are going to look at the form I'm looking at. It's going to look a little dirtied up. I mean, they're like, what are they trying to do with this horse? They've been running on the all weather. They've been running it on, uh, varying distances. Now you're getting to a distance where the horse has won before. You're dropping weight. You're keeping Zach aboard. I mean, he ran third by a neck last time, so it was a blanket finish. So it's not like he ran bad. I mean, it was a dirt race, but he dropped weight off of that, and so you're going to be getting. He's listed at 118. You might not get 118 just because I know I think that's below what Zach normally gets under. So, but yeah, I mean the fact that they want to keep Zach aboard and give up that weight, which like to us here in America doesn't seem like a big deal, but they try every single advantage to win races over there. So like they'll put if they really wanted to run at 118, they would figure out they would get a jock to run at 118. But at least my PPs note that they think that this horse is probably going to run closer to 120. So, but all that being said, I think the ten is very interesting. It is got just a bunch of dirty form. You see Zach stay aboard. That might be enough to set off enough alarm bells and know that this horse is well meant. And maybe we don't get the price that we should on a horse like this, but I thought that I agree with you. I think that horse is interesting. And the other horse I liked was the three Happy Together. And this was kind of similar to the thir- the 12 horse CP Brave, where I was just looking for another horse that has some, has run this distance. I think the configuration of Happy Valley is different. I think it's a two turn
Yep.
1800. So not necessarily the same, but is a horse that's kind of been bouncing between Shaw Tin, Happy Valley, has been running in Group Threes, won a Group Three, but albeit at a very, very low weight. And now you're getting a pretty high weight, but he ran pretty well last time at a higher weight. So I don't know if the weight's necessarily going to affect him too much. I know you said we were talking how the draw doesn't matter, but hey, like it never hurts to be drawn inside. So well, maybe unless you're running 1,000 meters, but drawing the two post here, I think. I don't know. I think that this horse, when you look at the speed pro figures, seem to kind of be the horse that if you're like a figure person, seem to kind of make sense. I think it's just because he's kind of a consistent horse, and it looks like he's been running in like the high 10, 106, 108, 106, 108. So he just seems like one that it's just pretty consistent coming in here with decent form. So I agree with you on 5G patch. I think that's one I'm trying to kind of get around. Um, I, I I don't know. I think maybe he wants. I don't really know what he wants, but it seems like the connections think that he wants longer, and maybe this was just a prep for the next graded attempt he's gonna have.
Yeah.
But I mean, you get Hugh Bowman to stay aboard, so or to get aboard. It looks like he hasn't ridden them, but yeah, I mean, he was running against Romantic Warrior last time. Romantic Warrior is not in this race, so um, maybe I'm overlooking the two a little bit, but I'm gonna try elsewhere here.
Yeah, I don't know what the board does here, to be honest. It's a really good betting race, to be honest with you, because I don't know where it's going to go. A lot of times, I can kind of predict. Okay, I think it's going to be short, and sometimes I'm wrong with that. But it's an interesting field for sure. And yeah, I don't know who takes money, to be honest, but I'm with you. I think that horse wants to go longer. So,
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about in this race?
I don't think so. Just remind me in the morning when I didn't play something when I said it's a wide open field that I'm stupid.
Race 10. Um, you said that you think you can single this race. So
I
I'm
do.
curious. I'm curious where you ended up on.
I think the 11 Beato is way better than the rest of this field. I think that horse, if it runs its race, should win by 4 or 5 lengths, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's that good. I do think, right, the horse had an excuse last time, right? It broke poorly. I'm willing to excuse that. And so to me, right, like if I was ever going to single in the last leg, which if you're playing a pick three, don't ever do that, right? There's no reason to only bet one horse in the last leg because they pay out two. So you're inherently, I think, giving money away if you do single. But if there was a single in this race, if you're playing other, bets, um, to me the 11 is the place to go, and to me, you know, strong signal from my side if that horse runs its race here. Um, I will play 1B, specifically in the 4 Giddy Up. I think that horse is interesting because it's the other horse in this field I don't think that's tried the distance yet, and I tend to like to see horses that are kind of building up that fitness. Right, it ran at 1,000, it moved up to 1,200, now it's running at 1,400. You know, you get James McDonald up, he is in town. Um, maybe that horse hasn't hit its cap yet, and maybe that's something that it wants to do. So to me, I'll use Giddy Up as a B. But yeah, I think to me, just based on everything, like I said, if Beato can, break okay and run its race, it's looking really tough in this field. So that's where I'll go, and kind of lean on that horse pretty heavy.
I don't have Beato anywhere in here, which
Good,
is which
perfect. That
is
makes me feel
yeah,
better.
yeah. I it's interesting because I looked at him a little bit, especially because I think I liked him last time out, and he ended up going off as the favorite. And I mean, the last two times he seemed to have run pretty well. But Zach stays aboard. I mean that's gotta mean something here. And I mean he ran fourth last time, but what by shoulders another blanket finish. So I guess you can't really take much against him there. But I I was kind of looking at maybe some of these other horses that I think might have a little bit more upside. My top pick is the four Giddy Up, and this is a horse that uh, they started him at the 1200 meters three times, and they stretched him out finally to 1400 meters, and he got his first win, and now he's going to 1600 meters, and I don't know. I feel like I've seen like a steady progression with this horse, where it looks like they're trying to build a little bit of distance into this horse, and I think maybe this is the end goal, right? Maybe the end goal is to get to that mile, and let's see what he has here. Speed Pro really liked that last race, going to 1400 meters. So going here in the 1600 meters, see if we run a similar race to that, I think he's going to be tough to beat, and we'll have to see. I mean, generally, I think if a horse can get seven, he should be able to get eight. I don't really think that like 6 to 8, I think is a pretty big jump, but 7 to 8, I know we always talk about that seven tweener distance, but yeah, I think that the four Giddy Up like fits really well in here. Another horse that I kind of liked was the five Karma, and you get Hugh Bowman aboard here, and this is just a horse that it just kind of is very consistent. This horse is consistently running the same figures. So you kind of know what this horse is, and those same figures are exactly the figures that Beato's running. So it doesn't necessarily have as many wins. I mean, he's got to win five back going the seven furlongs, but hasn't necessarily embarrassed himself. He's got two wins and eight starts here at Shatin. So just I think that just trying to look for alternatives outside of other horses that I think might be short, because I'm guessing Giddy Up is probably going to be your second or third choice in here. Beato is going to be your favorite. So I thought Karma might offer a little bit of value in a horse that I feel like is very consistent figure wise. And I mean, just missed last time out. Going this distance. So I think is might be one that maybe they find that, hey, like maybe we got to stick at this distance instead of kind of they've been jumping between the 7 and 8 furlongs there. And then outside of that, I have three other horses I kind of like, and are probably gonna be price dependent. And really just I think depends if I end up just singling that four horse in that first leg, but it's basically the three lightly raced horses. We'll start with the three Illuminous, who won on his debut, going six furlongs, and just similar to how I was talking about the four a little bit. One on his debut, came back and they stretched him out to the seven furlongs, and now they're adding another furlong. They're coming here to eight. These lightly raced horses, I feel like when they start in class three, like you can tell when these horses just start kind of rocketing up, like rocketing up the class system, and getting higher weights and trying to move up and maybe get ready for stakes racing. And a lot of times these horses that win on their debut, you immediately see them try a longer distance, or try and go up in class, or whatever. But I think here that's the case with this horse. I think they're trying to build more distance into this horse. I mean, you got Artie Schiller on the bottom, which we know wants to go that mile distance. So I thought Illuminous made a bunch of sense. It's maybe this is a young horse that they're really trying to build up there. And then I think you kind of say the same thing for the 13 Talents Ambition. Ran once, 7 furlongs, and all had a little bit of trouble in that race. I know Edzeni is your favorite jockey here, so I'm sure you're running to bet him. But I look at that first figure that he ran, and a little bit of improvement on that last race, and that number fits right in with the rest of this group. So I like seeing these horses that have, that are lightly raced and have run competitive figures with the rest of the group, because you know, uh, it's like trading a draft pick, right? We always make the joke when there's a draft trade, right? Like they're trading a second round pick for like some like big player, and they're like that second round pick can be anything. It can even be that player. Uh, you get that like I don't know sense of like, hey, if you get improvement, that the horses can run a winning figure here. What's interesting though now, Matt, is now that I'm talking through this a little bit, you have a bunch of young horses in here that have run similar figures, and if they all improve, right? I mean, I think this could be a tough race. I mean, you like Beato in here, who's run some nice races, and I feel like some of these lightly raced horses. I mean, they haven't run the same race, but they're pretty close. I don't. I'm looking at Speed Pro. I don't know what your figures are looking like, but I mean, are your figures really putting Beato that far ahead of everybody in this race?
Let me check if I'll tell you how much up I have it. So
Because like the 13 Talents Ambition, and then I also had the 9 Soliel Fighter written down here. I'm a little less interested in this one just because of the draw. Drawing the 14 post, which I think is going to be a little bit tough. But I don't think that horse has run bad in his first two starts, and that's another one. Like, these are young 4-year-olds. Like, if this one takes a step forward, I think he's right there as well.
yeah, I will say my figures have my figures have Beato as the best horse, and then the other two horses that look competitive just purely from a figure standpoint are the 1 and the 2. And so I didn't like either of those because they're the high weight, they're drawn wide, and I would expect some regression off of that. But just purely on my figures alone, Beato's efforts two back are about 2 lengths better than those horses, regardless of draw, right? I try and
Okay.
correct for weight and correct for draw, but all of that, right? I will say, right, to your point, you would expect some movement forward here. Um, there's been some discussion, amongst our group of folks, how soon that happens. Someone mentioned usually like the fourth or fifth race, you see a big jump forward, um, and I did kind of look for that as well. But some of these horses have won before, so maybe that means you don't expect as much of a progression. To be honest with you, right? I
Yeah.
think it's hard because they win the first out and then they move up in weight. You know, part of it, I think, when you see a horse move forward fourth or fifth, it's not even necessarily improvement. It's more just that they're finding their level, right? Remember, handicap racing, regression to mean. If you lose 4 races in a row, you're probably moving down in weight. Maybe you get a better draw at some point, and that tends to even itself out, right? Like Celestial Colors on Wednesday was a great example of that. Right? Where, fifth race, all of a sudden, wow, that horse ran a huge figure, and no, it just got a better draw and finally, found its level a little bit better than some of what it's been trying to do against some very good horses. So it tends to even out. Um, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of horses could move forward in here, and if you do want to, take that chance, it's well worth it. I mean, I looked at a horse like the 14 even, who is coming into its fifth race, right, and had been, running at a mile, and then, went up to, 2-turn race at 2,000 meters. It was running at 1,800, the favorite distance that we just talked about, and some of those efforts look really bad. But now it's scaling back. It gets a decent draw. It does pick up some weight. Could you, take a huge flyer at a really huge price on that horse? Maybe even, right? I wouldn't be surprised if, Beato doesn't run its race. That, a horse like that could surprise in this field. I just think that the move forward in here would have to be 5 or 6 or 7 lengths from those horses, and that's a tough ask, right? Especially within a month. Horses don't just magically improve like that. Even if they're steadily improving, it's hard to expect a horse, even a young horse, unless there's some huge layoff or something like that, to just magically jump that fig. And so that's kind of where I went with it. Was I don't think anyone's close enough to make that much of a jump forward in this case. But,
Okay.
but hey, I'm wrong a lot, and and we put that out there, and everyone sees I'm wrong a lot. So Beato is definitely not going to be a value play by any means. I just do think the horse is good enough in this case.
Are you going to use anybody else in here?
Yeah, I think I mentioned I'll use the 4 Giddy Up. Maybe now that I'm talking, I play a very cheap C ticket with the 14. Just again, low weight, good draw. Why not? But yeah, I think again, just from a purely betting standpoint, like I said, I don't think you ever want to play just one horse in the final leg. I think you're giving away money based on the payout structure in those pick threes if you do just play one horse in the final leg, because you will inherently lose money to whoever gets that consolation payout, right? And even sometimes, right, if you think a horse can run second in that leg, sometimes those consolations pay a lot better than a horse like Beato winning. Like you'll see, you'll get, 50-1 if Beato wins, and then if some bomb sucks up for second, you'll get like 200-1. I mean, even if you have like a 14-1 or 40-1 shot or something like that in there. So, hey, maybe it behooves you to even play some of those horses like that in those cases, right? I think betting strategy, the way they pay this out, makes it more interesting. And I do think, we've mentioned it before, wagering style is an advantage even above handicapping in some of these spots. So,
What I just found out too. I don't play it very often, but someone mentioned that the doubles also pay a
pay
consolation.
consolation every single time. Yeah,
Someone pinged me. They're like, how come I got paid? Because his double paid second. I was like, I don't know. I know the pick three pays consolation, but the doubles kind of new to the U.S. betting, so I've never played it, but apparently the doubles also pay consolation. So
yeah, it's a really weird bet in that case. Yeah, you need the winner in the first leg, but you then get paid out first or second in those second legs. I don't know. To me, you're sacrificing too much value to want to play that bet. It is good, I think. I tend to play it when there's not those pick threes, like or if I suck out first leg, I'll probably fire back just out of tilt. But I don't think it's a great bet because of that. I don't really like the structure in that. So, but yeah, it's interesting. So.
well, that's going to do it for us. Obviously, check us out at ontherwronglead.com, at wrong_lead. I'm at Cherry Drink. Matt will have his full card analysis and picks up on his Twitter, at Slow and Steadied. Matt, I don't know. I know your kids go to sleep, but we got a Friday night card next week. Maybe we take this show live next week.
I'm up for it.
All right. We'll talk and we'll see what's going on next Friday. I think maybe I'd be up for some late night gambling. So we'll post on Twitter what the plan is, but we'll catch you guys later. Have a good weekend, guys.